The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Now the story about an NBA team that lost everything and the one thing that had no choice but to make them all better. It's internal development. Welcome to the Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
What's up, boss? I'm good. Football season is upon us. Congratulations to all who celebrate. For me, truthfully, and this is of no disrespect to football fans, but for me, the beginning of September, when football season arrives, and I have many, many friends who are so excited right now, but all it means is that we're so close. We're so close to the real thing, which is basketball season. It just means we're 3 weeks away. I drafted my office obliged fantasy football team that I have to do every year. But really, it just means I'm 3 weeks closer to getting to draft my fantasy basketball team, the league I actually won last year, and the league in which I mean business. So we're getting close.
I turned on the ASU football game. I know you probably don't know what happened in this game, but I turned on the ASU football game from the actual kickoff. I watched them go down and just not look good at all. I was like, okay, I don't need to watch this. So I turned the game off, ran some errands, came back home, saw the game was tied, turned on the game. They were at the goal line. I watched them fail to score a touchdown, kick a field goal, and then give up a 56-yard touchdown to lose the game at the end of the game. So that's my experience watching football. I really think I'm kind of a curse, so I'm just not going to watch anymore. And look, I'm happy for those of you who watch just like you are, but I'm not all that interested. I will say, like, being a casual fan, highly recommend it. And now, obviously, I say that in a podcast where we're massive Suns fans and cover every minutia of the game, but that's the only sport I do it with. So I watched some of the Cardinals game too, and if the Cardinals lost, I would have felt nothing. Yeah. And when they won, I felt kind of happy. So I only experienced the good part of being a casual fan there.
No, it is kind of great, right? And we say this all the time, but it's also just like why we could never do the sports radio thing. Like those guys who really talk about every single, Phoenix is a sports town, and there are several teams to talk about, and then like big university programs too. The whole U of A ASU thing. As you were alluding to. So like I can't imagine being in the thick of it with every single team. For me, the Suns are enough. But the Suns also piss me off all the time. So let's get into talking about the Suns.
You think Gambo was like secretly kind of excited the Coyotes were going to Utah? He's like, one less sport to talk about.
I thought you were just making a hockey joke in general. To be honest, I don't know.
Okay. We're going to do internal development, and we're going to do it for 3 players. We chose the 3 players to do it with. We're going to do it all in one episode. We didn't think we could fill up an entire episode with Collin, Gillespie, and also Ighodaro internal development conversations. Sorry to those guys. But we have 3 players to talk about. We're going to cover all 3 of them on this episode. Before we get to that, there's a couple of NBA stuff that's happened in the last week or so that we could mention. One,
bombshell.
The Clippers are cheating. The Clippers are definitely cheating. Look, I'm afraid. I realize now when I watch ESPN that they're terrified of Ballmer suing them, and you could see it in their coverage of this so far. So I'm going to say, allegedly, the Clippers were performing a little bit of cap circumvention.
What, you're afraid of Ballmer? You think Ballmer's going to sue us?
He might just put out some like Russian troll farms to find us and make us miserable.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, the coincidences are too strong. Like I could really just leave it at that. But what do you think about this story?
So yeah, it's been talked to death already. Like if you haven't heard about it, then you've been living under a rock. But the Clippers are cheating. They created a fake endorsement opportunity for, allegedly, whatever.
Right.
But
yeah, the only thing that has to happen is it has to be proven. But that's only, that's more of a legal thing than anything else to me.
Yeah, $48 million, it seems, went to Kawhi Leonard that for doing nothing, right? It started as $28 million, and then it went up to 48. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Part of me wants to say, I guess the only thing I have to contribute, I want them to throw the book at Ballmer and the Clippers, and I don't know if it will happen, unfortunately, if they don't get the hardest of hard evidence. But also, I'm not entirely convinced that... Do you know where I'm going with this?
It was my first thought, like, oh God, I hope you didn't do this.
It's Pandora's box. I'm a little worried that we should have rules. For sure, this league needs to have rules. People should not cheat. I am a little bit worried that we're opening up a can of worms, and I'm sure Adam Silver is thinking this too. Messing with a can of worms that maybe you don't want to know how all the skeletons are made. There are some other owners around the league who might be implementing these tactics as well. That's all I'm going to say.
You mean one that threw money at every problem that he had? Potentially that one? No, I don't. We have no.
Yeah, we don't have to say anything else about it. Okay, it's just. It's funny that it was your first thought and it was my first thought too. When we reacted to it, and then we came together and we were like, okay, how are we going to talk about this? And it's makes sense that Ballmer cheated. Also, he's probably not the only one. So how deep do you want to go on this? I will say it's surprising that he was so stupid, right?
Yeah.
It's surprising that it was for something so silly where there weren't
and for
more...
Essentially the exact amount that would have been the difference between what he could have signed in Toronto and what he signed for in LA too. It's just all lines up in a way that just is like, okay, fine. The only thing that they need to explain is why he signed an endorsement where the company required him to do nothing, and that's the only thing that they for sure can't explain. But we'll see. There's obviously an investigation going on. So we'll follow up with it when it happens. I have a feeling nothing will happen.
That is a bummer. If absolutely nothing happens, it's a bummer. This was a tree planting company, correct? A fake tree planting company?
Yeah, like a carbon offset company, yeah.
Yeah, okay. If the players on the Suns last year were to get got doing this, what fake organization would they be repping? Do you think
I don't know.
One of my, maybe not my first thought, but my second thought was a tree planting carbon offset company could be great for Kevin Durant. That would have been a great endorsement.
He's got too much tree already, if you ask me. One more thing, Kevin Durant. In an interview, a classic EuroLeague player interview in their own language moment, Micic shared that Kevin Durant was unhappy with his usage in Phoenix, which it was there's nothing surprising here.
Micic was also in the locker room for 15 minutes, but
it's probably not hard to figure it out if he was unhappy or not. I think from an outsider's perspective, we were pretty convinced of that. And no surprise. I will say that happened under Frank Vogel. It seems to we never heard exactly what went on with Monty, but he was fired after a not very long time. And then of course there was clear unhappiness with Budenholzer. So it's all right, well, I hope they give you the ball all you want in Houston, and that's the end of that. I don't think that the solution to all of the Suns' problems were give Kevin Durant the ball a lot more or use him differently, but the usage phrase implied to me that he wasn't given the ball enough, which I don't know. I'm happy we don't have to talk about that on a week-to-week basis anymore, I will say. Suns might suck, and he might be reveling in that, but we don't have to argue about that specific aspect of it anymore.
I'm sure some of us will. There are going to be a lot of people who can't help themselves.
I
don't know. We'll see. I'll put my hand up and say, myself included, at various times this season, I will be thrusting myself into the Houston Rockets discourse, but only if it kind of looks like they're going down, basically. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how it goes with the Rockets this year. Those Suns-Rockets games, obviously all circled on my calendar. Those are going to be really exciting.
If the conversation is about the Suns' offense did not operate properly, including what Kevin Durant did on and off the ball, then, hey, I agree with Kevin Durant. Just don't think that we're on the same page about that. Let's talk about Ryan Dunn. Internal development for Ryan Dunn. We have to start with Ryan Dunn. I think he is.
Really?
I think the three players that we're talking about, I think he's the most important one. And I think it'll be interesting to talk about the players as we go through this. But I think his development is the most important for the Suns' overall success this season and the future of these three players.
Hey, so every week you say you like to think that maybe there's a new listener. So in case there's a new listener,
yes,
I'll do it this week.
Okay.
This is a recurring segment, a recurring series that we do every year at this point. Although it's gone
4
up,
years in a row, maybe 5. Yeah,
I don't know. It's gone up and down. It started back in the days where the Suns were truly on a rocket ship to the finals, right? It was the season after they made the finals, actually, but it was the fact that they had a young DeAndre Ayton and a young Mikal Bridges and a young Cam Johnson and obviously Devin Booker, all these guys on the roster. And at that point in time, we were able to devote an internal development episode to each guy per week.
Yeah,
because that's
an hour and a half. Yeah, probably for each guy with a guest.
Yeah.
But
that's how important it was at the time. And then we went through sort of the parallel opposite era where it kind of felt like there was absolutely no youth on this roster whatsoever. And here we come back.
External development we did for those seasons.
Yeah, but here we come back, towards sort of a neutral position on the spectrum again, I think. Well, I guess they're leaning more towards rebuilding than competing right now for sure. But youth is an important part of what the Suns do once more. And their ability to take guys last year who showed a relative amount of promise and properly develop them and teach them to do the right things is going to have a massive effect on whether they're really able to win any games this year. So I think all three of these guys that we're going to talk about are going to be important to their success. They're not by any means the only guys who are important to their success. That's why next week we're going to do, spoiler alert, external development and talk more about the young guys who they're bringing in from outside. But yeah, this is a good place to start. And you're absolutely right, by the way. Ryan Dunn, far and away the most important, I think, to the future of these three guys. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you wanted to start with the most or the least important.
I don't know. There's a conversation about the other two guys on who's more important. Actually, could be kind of interesting. But this was sort of born out of a joke too, because the Suns were not doing anything to improve the team. They just stood pat, and we made a lot of jokes about internal development, and then it turned into a series. There are 3 questions that we try to answer for each player in this series. Those 3 questions are: who are they? So who are the players? Who is he? How can they improve? So we talk about some sort of tangible improvements, trying to be as realistic as possible with those improvements. And then the third one is: how confident are we that they can make those types of improvements? Because I think it's important to be as realistic as possible when talking about the types of improvements that these players can make. Because ultimately, when it is a young player, it's about how they improve, how they change, how they grow. And that could have a very large impact on a team over time. And we're going to have a couple of other guys to do this with next year after we see an NBA season out of guys like Fleming, Malawach, etc., Kobe Brea.
Kobe, etc. is his last name officially, I think.
To be honest, maybe Jalen Green. I don't know. It could be. He's still pretty young. So, we put Devin Booker on it when we first started. So I think Jalen Green, if he's still on the team, would definitely apply. All right, let's talk about Ryan Dunn. Who is he? Basic stuff right off the bat. 6'6" forward, 6'7", depending on where you look. 6.9 points per game last season, 0.8 assists, 3.6 rebounds, 19 minutes per game. He shot 43% from the field, 31% from three, 48.7% from the free throw line, which
on 3 attempts all season.
Yeah,
like
which of course gave him a 51% true shooting, 51.7% true shooting. He is, of course, a defense-first player, as he was billed as a rookie. And I think if you were trying to do the, floor ceiling thing with him, his ceiling is like a top wing defender in the NBA. His floor is probably like some sort of bench wing defender in the NBA. Let's, just to be frank.
His floor, I think, is, 10 to 15 minute per game energy guy.
Yeah,
that we've taller a Kogi. I mean, I wasn't gonna leap immediately to comparing him to another literal player.
I'm grateful we have a Kogi to make comparisons to, as Suns fans got to see him.
Yeah,
but yes.
So something like that, I guess, if you wanted to bring up a name, yeah. But I think Ryan absolutely still has this ceiling as basically a two-way starter. Where do you want to start? I mean, I know you want to start with who he is. But
yes.
Where do you want to start with?
Stats. Let's go. So I know that we tend to look up a lot of stats here, and let's talk about some of those that we have found. I can start. You can start. Either way is fine with me.
I'll start. I think the most important thing I want to stress to people about Ryan Dunn, if you want to take the glass half full approach, is like just what our expectations were for this guy going into his rookie season. Everyone was emphasizing, we were stressing the fact that this is a defense-first prospect. And I still feel like we're very much hammering home that point, making that emphasis. And yet, people are expecting quite a bit of offensive growth out of a guy who has already shown and demonstrated a lot of offensive growth. And really, he deserves that. The fact, he deserves that credit, that is. The fact that he was even able to shoot 32% from deep last season?
31
on like a few attempts per game. And yes, a lot of them were wide open, but the fact that he was taking them with volume is a massive leap compared to what he was able to do at Virginia. This is a guy who was a first-round draft pick. He did not have a single 20-point game in his 2 years of college basketball at Virginia. Not a single 20-point game. For comparison, Ighodaro, who is by no means like an incredible scorer, but he's a much better offensive prospect than Ryan, he was a second-round pick. He had 7 games in his senior year at Marquette alone of 20-plus points. Ryan never had a 20-point game. And then by the end of his season, his rookie season with the Suns, the second to last game of the year, he had 26 points. That was a season high in a game where, do you remember this game? It was against the Spurs. Took 21 shots, a lot of threes. Devin Booker played in this game. Bradley Beal played in this game. But Ryan Dunn took 21 shots, had 26 points. He's got a long way to go offensively, but like honestly, based on what he was at Virginia, the guy who he already is now in 12 months is pretty impressive. And I want to start there with his offense.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to start. I will say, just as an example of how we felt about him going into the season, we had our friend Richie, who is now an actual NBA scout, on the podcast to scout the draft. My questions for Richie were, is Ryan Dunn the best defender in the draft? To which he said he's the best, maybe the best defender he's ever scouted in college. And then I asked him, is he also the worst offensive player in the draft? Which he said, yes, probably. So that's kind of how he was viewed coming in to the league. And of course, like you said, he had an awesome summer league where he looked amazing and the shot looked there. And then I think he started the season with a really good shot. So just offensively, 34% from the right corner, 32% from the left corner, 34% from the right wing, and 24% from the left wing. So a weird thing with him where he actually shoots better from one side of the floor than the other, significantly. Shot 63% at the rim. I think when you look at what he is currently and you're trying to really figure out what he can be offensively, the first place you start is he has to be able to shoot threes. He seems to be confident enough to do it. Credit to the coaching staff for telling him to shoot. Credit to Kevin Durant. Credit to Devin Booker, because both of those guys apparently were also telling him to shoot constantly. He never really looked afraid. There was a couple times in the middle of the season where he hesitated a little bit. That mostly was not there for him. He seemed to be okay letting it fly and, shooting 31% if that's what it took. So that's the first place I think where you have to talk about his shooting. That's where he really has to get great, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. He looked really confident in his ability as a shooter, even though we all know he's not a good shooter. And I think the next step for him then is, there were other avenues of his game as not a creator at all, but like an off-ball finisher. We talked about his ability to finish in the pick and roll where he was actually kind of efficient. obviously as kind of just like a transition lane filler too. He needs to take those areas on offense where he can be pretty good and show us more confidence in his ability, because it like you saw bits and pieces of it with Ryan last year, but it just never felt like he was able to really put the whole package together offensively. And my big thing for him too is just like, he's not going to be an integral part of the Suns offense this year. He's just not. But he needs to be a little bit more comfortable with handling usage himself.
Yeah.
The way that guys like one stat that I noticed here that I wrote down, Royce O'Neal, who played like 3 more minutes per game than Ryan last year, averaged twice as many touches. Because Royce O'Neal, not a guy who's creating offense for himself, as we know, but he's comfortable as a connector. He's comfortable putting the ball on the floor, handoffs to other guys, creating out of those handoffs, whatever. And again, Royce doesn't score, but he just touches the ball. We need to get to a point where Ryan is comfortable touching the ball, making quicker decisions. No one's expectation for him in year 2 is that he's going to be like, I don't know, averaging 5 assists a game or like making the quickest decisions on the floor, but he needs to be involved. It can't be 4-on-5 offense, right?
Yeah. Definitely. He has, Basketball Reference, or Basketball Index, I should say, does grades. They grade out based on tracking stats. Gravity is one of the things that they grade out. He has an F. He's one of the players in the NBA with the least amount of gravity when the ball swings to him, or, leave him open. That's the scouting report on him. Leave him open. And that's why I do want to give him credit. We're talking about the amount of 3-pointers he shot. Per 36 minutes, he basically shot 7 threes a game.
That's crazy. That's a
yeah,
lot.
6.7 3-point attempts per game.
How many did KD take?
Per 36 minutes. Probably less than that, actually, now that you mention that, because he played like 40 minutes a game.
Yeah,
so.
if KD just forced up 15 of those per 36, literally, even if they were contested, we would have won a lot more. I'm sorry. I don't mean to do it. I'm sorry. It was just tempting. It was there. Anyway, you were saying.
But you mentioned what else he's good at and how you can envision him being a little bit better. 1.18 points per possession as the roll man. So we're talking about the sort of short roll type of play that he's capable of doing. That's something he has to get good at, because if they're going to put guys, specifically bigs, in the dunker spot occasionally this year, which I have a feeling they are, just based on the fact that Cleveland did that quite a bit with Jared Allen, so I could see them doing that more this season, probably more than any other time of Devin Booker's career, if I'm being honest. That's something he has to get good at. He shoots 63% at the rim. That's good. That's better than league average, so like at the rim, he's doing okay. He also has a bit of a floater. We talked about that throughout the season. I don't have the stats on that, but I know that he made it at a pretty good rate. That's why it all adds up to 1.18 points per possession, which is basically the best non-big points per possession as a roll man for the Suns last season.
I have Oso's floater stats when we get there. I forgot to look it up for Ryan, but it's a good shout on your part. Yeah, he does have that.
Where else? And now let's kind of transition to the where he can improve stuff here too. 1.33 points per possession on cuts. That's very, very good. Now, like, cuts is one of those stats where, like, usually it's really good because you're getting shots at the rim for most cuts. You're not really doing a lot of pull-up J's, except, KD or Booker would. But guys like Ryan Dunn, they're dunking on cuts, right?
Also sort of heavily dependent on who you're playing with. Not always, but if you're playing with Devin Booker, you're going to get open on cuts. If you're playing with Nikola Jokic, you're going to get open on cuts. If you're playing with, I don't know, Jared Butler this season, like we'll see. Like certain guys on this team, if they're trying to create, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And I'm sure Ryan will experience that. All the more reason that it'd be great for him. Our expectation as of now is that he's an opening day starter. But we don't really know, like that's a conversation that we don't know. But I would just think the more that Ryan plays with Devin Booker on the floor this year, the easier it's going to be for him. Just if you're looking at stats like efficiency, true shooting, that sort of thing.
But also, if you look at the way the Cleveland Cavaliers played offense, I'm going to continue talking about this, and we'll have a chance to like dive into some actual footage of that at some point during this offseason as we get closer and closer to the season, or even just looking at the way the offense looks in preseason and stuff like that once we get there. But there's a lot of cuts. There's a lot of cutting lanes. There's a lot of cuts that are sacrificial. But sometimes those sacrificial cuts open up threes, and then the next time you do them, that's how you get to the rim, right? Because now they're afraid of the three-point shooter. So he has to move. He has to move fast, and he has to be able to finish at the rim. The other thing I'll say is 1.06 points per possession in transition. I have a feeling that's
surprisingly not great.
Exactly. I agree. That's why I'm bringing it up here instead of the first part here. 1.06 points per possession in transition. I have a feeling that's partially related to the 48% from the free throw line. That can, because they're probably fouling him occasionally at the rim as well. He needs to get better at free throws, and that's important.
Yeah,
but also he needs to run hard in transition. The Suns were not a team that ran in transition in the way that I expect them to in this coming season, based on how much they talked about it so far in the offseason and the fact that they're just younger. But players like Ryan Dunn, we saw it with Mikal Bridges. We need wings to get out and sprint without the ball, get the ball in the good spots, around the three-point line and attack at the rim. And, you can't be afraid to shoot free throws in that case, so you have to be able to shoot them. That means attacking guys who are under the rim. And so he has to get better in transition and making free throws.
Right. It has to really evolve from a point where right now, I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. Not just Ryan, but Oso too. It's unacceptable if these guys are going to be important to our future and play heavy minutes. It's unacceptable that we're talking about not one, but two, potentially wing players, because we're talking about Oso being a power forward instead of a center, who are shooting 55% for the free throw line. It just can't happen. And we need to get these guys rapidly to a place where it's not just like they're avoiding free throws and like maybe they'll get there occasionally and not be afraid to take that shot. They need to be seeking out contacts a lot more than both of them were last year. And so we just need to see like massive improvement from Ryan from the free throw line. He shot 19 for 39 last year. Really no sample size at all. The scouting report right now says ignore this guy if he's at the three-point line and hard foul if he's coming to the rim. We were talking about that was one of the big advantages too of a guy like Kaman Malawach drafting him. It's like, hey, we don't know if he can actually shoot threes. They're going to let him shoot threes, but we know he shoots 80% from the free throw line. Brian can't even say that, right? He struggles with the threes and he also struggles with the free throws. So he needs to be more of a threat in transition. He also just needs to be a basic on-ball threat. I'm talking about like being able to come and collect a handoff or do a straight line drive out of it and seek out the contact and try and finish over the top of someone, get to the free throw line. I know he has the floater as well. Maybe he can finish over the top with a floater, but he needs to really start seeking out those opportunities if he wants to have a chance as a true starting caliber player, like a starting caliber player on a good team in the NBA one day, right? None of this has to do with creation for others. For me, it's really all about let's focus on the creation for yourself first before we try with Ryan to pile on anything else.
I'm glad you talked about his starting. Where is he going to start on this team? Power forward. But at least that's what we're assuming. He's taller than Dillon Brooks, so you can say that essentially he's going to be starting at power forward. Two things with that. I want to talk about his defense, and let's go into some detail about his defense in a second, but I do want to mention something that I think will be important for him, and that's rebounding. They're going to be small. If we're assuming the starting lineup's going to be Jalen Green, Devin Booker, Dillon Brooks, Ryan Dunn, and Mark Williams, that's not very big. That means guys need to really chase the rebounds. And players like Ryan Dunn, right? If he's going to shoot, let's say he improves three-point percentage, next year by 2, and he shoots 33. That's still good. That's an improvement. But he's not going to do a ton of creation for others. Like, what he needs to do is really lock in on the hustle stuff. Like, I mean really lock in. You have to have guys who are not going to give you a ton of other stuff when it comes to self-creation and stuff like that. They have to fit next to the guys who do that by doubling down on all of those things. That means chasing every rebound. If they're going to chase offensive rebounds, this is a strategic thing, of course. But if they're going to chase them, which we expect they will based on how they've talked, he's got to be the guy that does that. He's got to chase those rebounds hard and get more. And I will say last year, he improved his rebounding percentage as the season rolled along. His post All-Star stats were slightly better than his pre-All-Star stats, and rebounds per game. He played a few more minutes per game, but it basically went up by 1 full rebound, which is...
Oh, did it? That's good to know.
Yeah, it's good to know. Not insignificant. It's like a significant number. And I think you could see it, even in Summer League, that he had some sort of intention to try to chase rebounds. And that's something I think he's going to need to do for the good of the team, but also just to find a way to get more and more minutes. You have to do those little things that give the team extra possessions every once in a while, because, when you shoot 32% from three, you're throwing away some possessions on those in some ways, for the good of the team overall in the long run, because it's a development thing. But, you're giving the other team the ball on some of those 3-point attempts because there's no chance of them going in. So he has to do those little things a little better. And that includes, by the way, defense. Now, we talked a lot about his offense. Defense is harder to quantify.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a little easier to talk about offense in this conversation. But I would describe him as pretty good defensively in his rookie year, but not as good as I expected, which is fine because rookies are, it's just a little tough to be a great defender as a rookie.
It really was. We were sold, like you said, on the greatest defensive prospect ever. Not quite. But his offense was better than expected. His defense was worse than expected. His defense was still far better than his offense, right? If that all sort of wraps it up.
Yes. And some ways to quantify it, I will say. Let's start with some of the on-off stats. Minus 2.4 differential when he played last year. And this is, by the way, a player, one of the few guys who actually put an effort in consistently, Ryan Dunn. So, you look at that team and you're like, okay, there's rookies ahead of him. It makes sense that they were a little bit worse with him on the floor. There's veterans ahead of him. He is a rookie. So it makes sense that they're a little bit worse with him on the floor. In the differentials, the defense got better when he played. The offense got significantly worse when he played, which of course makes sense. He's a better defender than he is offensive player. Just not relative to expectations, just period. That's just what he is. There were 4 players that had, and I'm just using stats because it's all we have, a positive EPM on the defensive side. So defensive EPM. There were 4 players on the Suns that had a positive impact defensively, according to EPM last year. He was one of them. Would you like to try to guess the other 3?
So EPM's an impact stat.
Yes.
That's a very difficult one to guess if you haven't looked at it, I feel like.
Because it's not quite minutes based, right? Yeah.
I'm going to go with Oso as one
Correct.
of them. Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to go with Mason Plumlee.
No.
Who else was on the Suns last year that I liked?
You're not going to get one of them, but one of them was the only tall forward on the team.
The only tall forward on the team?
Well, the only one that played. Kevin Durant. So, of course he had a positive because you put other guys in there.
I promise that was just a brain fart. I'm not that much of a hater. Okay, yeah. All right. KD, yeah, that makes sense.
So KD, you got one more. I'm going to give it to you because he didn't play the whole season. Cody Martin.
Oh, yeah. No, I wouldn't have gotten that.
And let's say Cody Martin, let's throw him out because he didn't play enough minutes. So really the 3 that played...
Hustled his butt off, I remember, in the 16 minutes he played for us.
He did. He actually is a good defender, I think. But Cody Martin and Oso Ighodaro on the defensive EPM stat are significant when it comes to positives. Then there's a big drop-off in those numbers. And then there's Ryan Dunn and KD in that order. So he's still, according to a stat that tries to do this, he still is a positive defender of the 4 that were on the Suns last year. Ryan Dunn. So credit where credit's due there. Another thing I looked at just to sort of quantify it in some ways, this is the B-Ball Index stats that uses tracking stats. They track ISO defense, screen navigation, pickpocket rating. Those are the 3 things I looked at. He's an A+ in ISO defense. Don't ISO against Ryan Dunn. He's good in isolation.
I think that's the stuff that most obviously pops on tape,
yes,
too, right?
I agree.
When a guy is good at ISO defense in general, it's hard for a defensive specialist to get the same sort of media coverage, the same sort of highlight reels as an offensive superstar. But maybe the exception to that, other than awesome chase down blocks and whatever, people love ISO defense. They love watching a guy just lock someone up. And Ryan at his best is absolutely capable of that.
Yes, I agree. A C in screen navigation and a C+ in pickpocket rating. Pickpocket rating, I think, is one of those stats where I talk about the hustle stats, like getting out in the passing lane type things. He needs to get better at that. He's got the wingspan. He doesn't quite have like a 7'3" wingspan or 7'4" or whatever, like some of these defenders have, but he's got a 7 foot plus wingspan. But the screen navigation is the one stat where, because when I look at defensive stats, and this is what I recommend for anyone that tries to look up stats like this in the future, I should say, check to see if it matches your eye test. Don't make decisions based on the defensive stats. They're still flawed. But try to find things that match your eye test, or try to find stats and then question if they match or don't match your eye test. To me, the ISO defense matches. Good in that. Also, rarely was isolated. Like, he even had a couple plays against LeBron where he like stood him up a couple of times in the season. But the screen navigation one, to me, also matches my eye test. I think the pick and roll defense in general, I think is one of those areas for him that has a lot of room for improvement.
You're
especially
right.
If you have better centers on the team next year.
Well, that's what I was about to say. And the really difficult thing, I know that the statistics obviously are trying to address this, but it's like, how do you isolate for the impact of the big man behind you when you're talking about pick and roll defense, especially?
It's really hard. Yeah.
And the Suns, who had horrible defensive centers last year, they just did. Like if Ryan's playing with Nurkic, if he's playing with Nick Richards, if he's playing with Mason Plumlee, how do you isolate his ability to do his job as a chaser in a drop coverage, say, or his ability to show, right? When the big man is showing, at least that's just really difficult. But I agree with you. I think there's room for improvement in my eye test as well. I think his ISO defense is good. He needs to foul less. If we want to just talk about like an easy
it's
stat,
a good one. Yeah,
yeah,
and reputation will help with that too.
Reputation helps. B, I don't know. It's really hard. But you kind of just to a certain extent have to learn to pick your spots. And maybe it's unfair, like in one way, for us to ask Ryan, because we really want him to lead with energy, and there's a certain imprint that we want him to put on the game when he like locks guys down or right is just like in the zone, shuffling his feet, whatever. But at the same time, you can't foul. And sometimes you can. Like, the occasional reach and foul doesn't actually bother me, even understanding that, like, each additional foul is contributing to the bonus eventually and whatever. But the shooting fouls, you got to get away from the shooting fouls. And I feel like that was an issue with Ryan sometimes last year. In fact, the stat that I pulled is that he committed a foul on 14% of shots he contested, which was 8th percentile in the NBA among wings. So just a guy who fouls too much when other guys are going up for shots. But otherwise, it's like, we want you to play with energy. We want you to be a dog. There's just certain moments where he has to learn to rein it in. And I do just hope that will come with time. It feels theoretical with Ryan on defense still, right? Like, we see all of it. The film, when he's at his best, he's up there. Like, he's up there with the great defenders of the NBA. It just hasn't been remotely a consistent product in his rookie season.
I think Dillon Brooks will have a good impact on him, like a positive impact on him, because we want him to be a little nastier. Same thing we talked about with Mikal Bridges. Like, you don't want a nice guy defender, you want a mean one. And I will say for him, a little bit they're setting him up for failure, and this is where we can switch over to the confidence part of this conversation. Just by the fact that like, it would almost feel better if the starting lineup was some sort of combination of Devin Booker, Dillon Brooks, Ryan Dunn, Devin Booker at point guard, no Jalen Green, and then some sort of forward that could also create the position that's Ryan
Jonathan Kuminga's music.
Lauri Markkanen.
That's what they were trying to do. Yeah, no, I mean, I tried to trade for Lauri Markkanen.
And he's played great in Eurobasket. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and I know we're already going long. This is going to be a long episode, but the position he guarded the most last year, shooting guard. Because that's kind of how big he is. He's kind of a shooting guard sized player. He's a little bit bigger than that.
He's a small forward sized player, but no, I feel you. Shooting guard. He
and
can do both.
He's going to have to guard bigger guys because just some teams will do that. I will say, like, the era of like these all do it all forwards that are huge and can do everything, is kind of gone. Like the league is not sort of dominated by those types of players anymore. But there are guys that can beat you if you don't have the right size to do it, like that are like Tobias Harris now. If you, like that can just happen in a regular season game. If you don't have the size to guard him, he'll score 30. So like maybe it's not Carmelo or LeBron, prime LeBron or guys like that anymore, even like Paul George at his peak. But there are guys, and he's going to have to guard those guys. And to guard bigger, putting on muscle is going to be part of that. Confidence in where he can improve. Just like sort of weigh offense versus defense, I think, before we wrap up here.
Real quick.
Where do you feel he could improve?
I just have to address something that you said. Would you take prime Melo over peak Paul George? Is that like an obvious thing for you? I don't think that's obvious.
Yeah, I probably would. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That might be be a nostalgia thing. I don't know. Or like
I think the way to think about it is because if Carmelo was younger now, he would play differently, or maybe he wouldn't, but like he would kind of have to in order to be super successful. But like as far as the players that were better, I would say Carmelo was better in his era playing the style of basketball that mattered.
He's certainly more talented.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're both.
Yeah, I think that's close.
Look, I'll be frank.
Think that's close.
Don't really like either of them, if I'm being honest. But
yeah, that's.
But I think both of them are very good. Don't get me wrong. I just not my favorite type of. What was
the non-Carmelo related question you asked me?
Confidence in where he can improve. How you feel?
Oh, he's gonna do it. I mean, all three of these guys. Not to give away all my answers, but he's gonna be better this year. He just is.
They're hard workers.
That's not very analytical. Sorry, guys, but you guys want me to be optimistic anyway. Ryan Dunn is going to be better in year 2. What is his offensive ceiling in year 2? I don't know. That's where I will sort of push back a little bit and try to not ask for too much. I think I previously said, like, can he average 10 points a game in year 2? And I guess maybe I would stand by that. Just be a little more efficient. Take an extra 3 per game. Attack sometimes. Your closeouts. And don't shoot 48% for the free throw line. And honestly, if you just do that and foul less on defense, I'll be pretty damn happy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair expectation for him. Shoot slightly better. I expect him to play 20 plus minutes this year. He played 17 or 19 last year, so 17 pre-All-Star break, like 18.
Yeah, for him to even average 10 points a game also is me assuming that he can get to like 27 to 30 minutes per game, which I don't think is a given. I think there's a certain amount of depth on this team now, so he has to earn it. But I'm
confident he will get slightly better offensively. I'm more confident I think he will have a noticeable improvement defensively this season. And frankly, I'm hopeful that will happen, because when you're in the NBA, it's probably shocking just how athletic and strong these guys are and how differently it's called and the difference of the spacing. You get used to that stuff. Defenders get used to that stuff. They start adjusting what they can do. They start getting better and understanding players' tendencies, and that's what I expect out of Ryan Dunn next year. And then, just a little bit of an improvement shooting, a little bit of improvement as a roll man, hopefully a significant improvement from the free throw line, and then getting better at cuts, getting better in transition. All of those things, if he gets slightly better of each of those things, I think he can get to 10 points pretty easily.
Keep in mind, too, like you were mentioning the roll man thing. That's not just on Ryan Dunn. That's a Jordan Ott thing, too. So, Jordan Ott can help Ryan Dunn get to 10 points per game because of the way that Budenholzer was sort of neglecting him on offense at times last season. So I hope he's helped along by the coaching staff as well. It's not just on him. They need to help him look better.
All right, who do you want to talk about next? Out of Oso Ighodaro and Collin Gillespie.
I mean, I like both of these guys a lot. I'm kind of itching to talk about Collin Gillespie.
Let's do it. I'm cool with that.
I just feel like there's a chance that Collin Gillespie is really important to the Suns this year, and I think we literally said that last week. But
I agree.
It's just true.
There's an element. One thing I really enjoy about doing these episodes is there's an element to looking at them sort of granularly, where you're saying, what did they shoot at the rim? What did they shoot from the corner? What did they shoot from the top of the key? How did they do at pick and roll ball handling? How did they do at all of these little tiny things? And sometimes you look at all those things separately and you go, oh, I'm not so sure how they're going to play next year. And sometimes you look at them all separately with Collin Gillespie and you're like, okay, he's definitely the oldest of these three. And also, like, a lot of these stats point to him potentially really benefiting just from having more opportunity. More opportunity for him, if he does a lot of the things in the same way that he did last year, will be pretty great for him because there's a lot that went well. Let's talk about who he is. He's a point guard. 5.9 points per game last year, 2.4 rebounds, 2.4 assists. Shot 43% from the field, 43% from three, 86% from the free throw line, 57.8% true shooting. Very good shooting on and off the ball last year. Can't quite get to the rim, which we could talk about a little bit more in the improvement
rim
section.
shooting was bad. That's the only thing holding that true shooting back. Couldn't finish at the rim.
As a reminder, he played 18 G League games, some of them in Denver, some of them in Phoenix. He did break his ankle last year, so it took him a while to get back on the court. In those G League games he played, he averaged 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 11 assists.
The Russell Westbrook of the G League.
It's insane to look at those stats.
It's one of the biggest stories about Collin Gillespie to me, I think, because I think he was two distinctly different players. And of course, like, Oso went down to the G League for a few games when we talk about him too, but it was different with Oso. Like, yeah, anyone's going to get more opportunity when they play in the G League, but there is no bigger contrast than when Collin did it. Because when he was in the NBA, he was spotting up on the wing next to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and was just expected to be like this good role player, which it's remarkable that he actually was, right? That he fulfilled that promise. But then he goes down to the G League and does something entirely different and has to be the on-ball offensive engine, the creative engine to the offense of the Valley Suns. And that's where he hasn't shown any of that stuff at the NBA level. But you also have to look at that stuff and think, could he? Like, he's already done this stuff of being a secondary playmaker and an off-ball shooter and a hustle guy and an excellent rebounder for his size. He can do all these like ancillary skills, I think, at least, as sort of the baseline. But
he did.
But where you can start to get really excited about Collin Gillespie, I think, is if you believe in what he did at the G League level and ask yourself, well, what if we just asked him to also create more on the ball? Is it possible that he's just kind of solid at everything? In which case, you have yourselves like a real player, a really good player.
There were I'm bringing up EPM again. I'm gonna say this.
I have a stat after your EPM stat.
Okay, perfect. This is just one of those all-encompassing advanced stats that uses a lot of tracking film to sort of try to estimate the impact of a player on the court over the course of a season. And they do, I think, the best job of like not being weighted based on the total amount of minutes played. There were 3 players on the Suns that had a positive EPM. So they, for all intents and purposes, this is saying 3 players on the Suns actually moved the needle towards winning when they played for the Phoenix Suns last year. Those 3 players, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Collin Gillespie.
Yeah.
Collin Gillespie was the 3rd player that had a positive EPM on the Suns last year.
We didn't give him the Dan Marley Hustle Award. That's right. For
Most importantly, he's award winner.
That shit
he
leads
did have
to
a minus,
winning, bro.
Yes, that's right. He's hustling. Minus 1.7 on-off stats throughout the year, but his has a lot of garbage time mixed in there. But I still think he had a positive impact, and that's what EPM says for him. Go ahead. What's your stat?
So you mentioned he averaged 6 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, something like that.
Yeah. 2.4, yeah.
He averaged 15, 6, and 6 per 36
That's
minutes.
Right.
Okay? That was the line. And this is sort of what we're talking about, right? Nothing overwhelming, but just if you extrapolate out, solid everywhere. 15 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Only 5 players in NBA history, Mike, have posted that stat line who were 6'1" or shorter. Okay.
Oh, okay.
5 players in NBA history have given the 15, 6, and 6 per 36 stat line at 6'1" or shorter. And yes, I am going to have you. Yeah, per 36. But,
okay, you're not even talking about actually averaging this.
No. I'm talking about per 36. One of these 5, assuming 200 minutes played. Okay. So one of these 5 is Collin Gillespie.
Yes.
The other 4, do you have any guesses?
I'm guessing Hall of Famers. Chris Paul?
Chris
No,
Paul. Chris
okay,
Paul
he
is
did get
one
to
of
6 rebounds. Okay.
Chris Paul is one of the 4.
Okay.
He only did this in one season.
Isaiah Thomas?
Isaiah Thomas is not on the list. There's only one other Hall of Famer on this list.
Okay.
But they're 3 pretty good players.
Who is it?
The other Hall of Famer is Bob Cousy.
Okay.
And otherwise, you've got Kyle Lowry and Eric Bledsoe.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's pretty good company for Collin Gillespie to randomly be in.
Surprisingly good rebounder for him. That's what really limits that stat, right? Yeah.
92nd percentile. Here's some rebounding numbers. 92nd percentile among guards in offensive rebounds. 88th percentile in defensive rebounds. That's something I really appreciate, too, because sometimes, actually, we were talking about Josh Okogie earlier in this episode, and he's a perfect example of this. Sometimes you get a guy, it's not that he's a fake rebounder because he's only focuses on one side of the ball, but he's just more motivated on one side of the ball. Josh Okogie is the perfect example of a guy who is relentless as an offensive rebounder. And actually, if you look at his defensive rebounding numbers throughout his career, he's pretty mediocre. Part of that might be strategy, too, and what the coaches are telling him. But
Right.
But Collin Gillespie's really good at both. He was really good at seeking out both offensive rebounds and getting defensive rebounds and then turning those into quick transition opportunities and kick-aheads, right? He was a really good rebounder for a guy who's 6'1". Also, really good deflections guy. 92nd percentile in deflections among point guards. I had to look it up because, of course, from one white backup point guard to another. TJ McConnell, 96th percentile. I thought maybe for a second he would have had him beat, but TJ McConnell is the king of that
it's too
stat.
Too good, man. Too good, yeah.
But there is a little bit of resemblance just in what they do. Not as playmakers. TJ is way above as a playmaker, but
and TJ can't shoot, which is
but
different,
as scrappy defenders or whatever.
Yeah.
Collin just has all of these skills, right? He's gonna be a pest. He's going to get after the ball and create extra possessions for you. He's going to push the pace when he has the ball. He shot 40% from 3. It's just literally what is not to like about this guy? I mean, there are a couple things that he struggled with, but everything points to he just needs more opportunity.
Yeah.
And this year
it would be nice if he was
2
inches taller. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. If he was 2 inches taller,
yeah.
It'd be a total game changer for his career.
As a pick and roll ball handler, on the plays he ran as a pick and roll ball handler, the Suns scored 1.39 points per possession. That is the most on the team, the highest efficiency of any pick and roll ball handler on the team when he ran plays. Now, ton of context to that, of course. He ran a lot less than Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. So the sample size is small enough to keep that number really high. But it's also a very, very good number. That's really good in a way that it's okay, we got to figure out if this is scalable. We have to push this as far as we could potentially push it. And the nice thing for him, too, shot over 50% from the corner on his career, only 25 attempts, but he can shoot on the catch and shoot from the corners, can shoot from the top of the key, so can also play off the ball. He's the only point guard on the Suns. He can play with both Jalen Green. He can play with Devin Booker as well. Can he play with all 3 of them on the court at the same time? Probably not often, depending on the matchup maybe. But he can definitely play with both of them when either of those guys sits. And I think he's going to have to, because they're going to need an extra guy who can dribble the ball at least down the court regularly. He won the Timeline's Dan Marley Hustle Player of the Year of the Week of the Year award because he hustles, and he legitimately does hustle. He runs in transition on defense. He runs in transition on offense. He jumps out into the passing lanes. He plays high on pick and rolls to try to force guys out to the half court line. He tries hard. All of that stuff matters, and he earned a spot in the NBA. For a guy who was on the fringes of the NBA, played on a two-way for the entire season, he earned a contract this year. You and I hoped they would sign him for more than 1 year. In some ways, the 1 year deal is a bet on himself that he can make more, and I think he will continue to try hard and also continue to hustle.
You know, because the Suns didn't have his bird rights based on just one season. Obviously,
yeah, they didn't want 2 years at a minimum.
And a two-way. Yeah, exactly. So now they'll have the opportunity to offer him more money if he plays well this year. But one thing I kept thinking about, too, just watching him play last year, And like, I understand the NBA is super competitive, but how did Denver not jump us on this one? Because he played 24 games for Denver on a 2-way contract. They could have, like, their bench was a disaster last year. They could have just offered him a minimum contract. And next to Jokic, he would have looked awesome. So, like, that was one of the things I was thinking about, too, is just, I really feel like we kind of lucked into Collin Gillespie a little bit. And, I hope we make the most of it now. And I hope he makes the most of the opportunity, too. And I will say, because we're being quite optimistic about Collin here, not to push back on it or anything, but it is the sort of thing where it's like so much of the conversation about Collin is extrapolating, taking these little bits of what he's done and saying, okay, like, but what if he played 3 times as much? Imagine what he could do. If you're expecting a guy to do that in order to win, then you're in a pretty crummy place. And that's why the Suns are in sort of a crummy place if we're just expecting them to, like, make the playoffs. But if you're in a rebuilding stage and you're understanding that, you have to understand exactly what you have with these younger players, they have the freedom to give him some more opportunities, some more on-ball reps. And I fully expect that they will.
Just to wrap up the conversation on him here too, how can he improve? Finishing. He shot 25 shots at the rim. Shot 48%.
Yeah, less than 50% on layups, basically. It's really bad.
Yeah.
Who's kind of overcome that again? I think I compare him to Ty Jerome last week?
We've done it multiple times, yeah.
I mean, Ty Jerome overcame that. Ty Jerome still doesn't really finish at the basket, but he has an awesome floater and he picks his spots.
And he shoots a lot of threes.
No, he does.
Which is what Collin needs to do as well.
Collin needs to do that too. But my point being, you don't excel in the NBA as, like, let's say at least a 6th man level point guard without having the ability to get downhill, get to the rim somehow. It's okay. If your go-to move is going to be a floater, Jalen Brunson makes it work too. If your go-to move is going to be a floater, so be it. But you need some way to leverage downhill pressure because that's ultimately the thing that's going to create the most shots for others. So for Collin, maybe he improves as a layup finisher. I'm sure he's working on it in the gym every day, but, like, maybe he just needs to be smarter about it, and it's okay if he's never going to be a 70% guy at the rim. He just needs to be better than 50%. No doubt.
I have zero doubt we're going to hear the Ty Jerome comparison to Collin Gillespie by Jordan Ott sometime this year.
Yeah.
And by the way, 43.5% on 62 three-point attempts from a catch and shoot. He also shot 28 pull-ups and shot 43% on those pull-ups. He's got to shoot threes. Yeah. He's got to launch. Look, I want him to get better at the rim, but he's got to shoot a lot of threes. He's got to shoot a lot. That means if they're going under or if he's running in transition and they're backpedaling, launch it. Let it fly. That's what Ty Jerome did. Just let it fly. And I think that's one way he can improve. And then
is it fair to say Collin,
there's ways too.
Is it fair to say Collin is maybe, the defense does need to improve outside of, like, the pressure and the hustle, which is good. He's still an undersized guard generally. Is it fair to say Collin is kind of the biggest boomer bust on this roster in the sense that, like, you could see if he just doesn't really play that much this year ultimately, like someone else just kind of nudges him out of the rotation.
Yeah.
Or he could be the 4th leading scorer on the roster. Would not be overly shocking to me if he just averaged 13 points a game this year. Right?
I agree, because, like, sometimes there's guys where all this stuff looks good on paper, and that's an important part to this conversation, right? I talked about how you look at all this stuff granularly and you try to figure out if they're going to be good or not. Well, that's just not how basketball is played. Basketball isn't played on a spreadsheet, if you will. It's not played by looking at individual shot attempts based on one spot on the floor. It all has to work together, and you have to have a situation where your role makes sense for what you're asked to do. So it all has to work, in order for it to actually work for him. That includes situation, coach, and, of course, his teammates. So all of that, if it does work for him, I think that is true. Like, the confidence level for me that he's going to be great next year, to be honest, not super high, but not low either. Like, I wouldn't call it low. It's just the type of player where, like, I have zero doubt the stats are going to look better because he's going to have more opportunity. How much that translates to winning, there's evidence that it should. But I'm just not sure because he's a small, unathletic guard. And like, it's rare that it works really well for those types of players. There's just a lot of things in there that can make you think that, oh, maybe it could actually work a little bit for him. Maybe he could be someone like TJ or Ty Jerome, where it does kind of work.
I think he's got 15 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists locked. That's my over-under per game for Collin Gillespie this year. And we're going to be saying, welcome back, Eric Bledsoe.
Let's talk about Oso Ighodaro. You ready?
Let's do it.
We got an hour in already. Time to talk about Oso. Okay. Who is he? 4.2 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 1.2 assists to 0.6 turnovers. He only played 17 minutes a game, did not play every game. He shot 60% from the field, 0% from the free throw line, 58% from the from the 3-point line. 3-point line. 58% from the free throw line.
It sometimes felt like 0% from the free throw line, but he did make some of them.
58%, better than Ryan Dunn. And then a 61% true shooting overall, which, by the way, with a 58% free throw percentage is still pretty good. Interestingly for Oso, just starting out with the stats here, because there's not a lot of minutes that he played. So we can't, we're not going to do 40 minutes on Oso here. He didn't play that many minutes throughout the season. But did have a plus 4.7 on-off differential and was essentially the best in net rating for all the rotation players.
And for defense.
Yeah, and it's all defense. It's all defense for him when it comes to his on-off differential. In fact, by EPM, since I've said it for all of them, he had the second best defensive impact by EPM and the worst offensive impact.
Yeah.
So he had the worst effect on the offense of any player that played. I'm looking at rotation players only, but the second best defensive impact for him.
Yeah, and the offense eye test wise just makes sense with Oso because it's like, yeah, we know he's skilled, but he's small and doesn't shoot, right? There's no gravity that he had offensively as a center, and this is why talking about how we can extend his NBA career and turn him into a much more useful NBA player, you have to talk about the multi-positional aspect of it. But we'll start with defense. They were 9 points better with Oso on the floor defensively last year. How much of that is Oso, who I do believe when I watch him is a smart defender and a mobile defender, but at the same time, how much do you credit Oso and how much of that is just, oh my God, Nurkic was a disaster. Oh my God, Nick Richards was a disaster.
Noise.
Right? Like in your head, is it a little of both, basically?
It's noisy. I think it's a little bit noisy. But I will say, it's not. I don't feel as though it's just a coincidence. But I do think that he just plays really smart. He does play really smart. That's really his number one skill, right? We talked about it before.
Well, because
he's not talking to David.
He's not a rim protector, not a natural one anyway. If he plays a lot more at the power forward position, he might evolve rapidly as a weak side rim protector. For a power forward, he might be giving you a lot of blocks. But if he's your main rim protector, a guy who's in a drop coverage or something like that, he's just, you talk about rim deterrence all the time. Oso's not a rim deterrence guy.
Yeah, nobody's going to be afraid, yeah.
The scouting report says that if he's in the game, you should attack him. And yet, here we were, and the Suns' defense was actually much better whenever he was on the floor, for whatever reason. So I do think it looked pretty good when they switched him on the perimeter. But not to the extent where it was oh my God, he's locking down these number one option guards, right? So you still have to trust him in the right scenarios.
80% in the restricted area. That's what he shot. 44% in the paint non-restricted area. And then basically didn't shoot anywhere else. Doesn't shoot threes. Doesn't shoot long mid-range shots, even if it is in the mid-range area by definition. It's a floater. He's shooting a floater in those cases. Can screen, can roll. He had, and this is where we can kind of wrap this all together in the improvement conversation too, the lowest points per 36 minutes of any rotation player on the Suns. He's the only Suns player that if he played 36 minutes last year and scored at the same rate that he was previous, he would have still not hit double digits in scoring. Only 8.8 points per 36 minutes. Not good.
Again,
and you say he won't shoot. It's not just that he won't shoot threes. Well, he wasn't looking at the rim from anywhere on the floor for like the first 50 or 60 games of the season.
But remember what I was saying about Ryan Dunn at the beginning of this episode, saying Ryan never scored 20 points in college. Oso did it kind of all the time. I mean, he averaged like 14 a game, but he did it like more than half a dozen times his senior year.
Yeah. Kolek was just throwing him lobs left and right.
Kolek was throwing him lobs left and right, but the fact that he was able to do that, right? It's the fact that that was able to be his shot diet at Marquette, and it didn't matter. You can get away with it because the average opposing center in D1 is 6'10", and now the average opposing center in the NBA is 7 foot or 7'1", and it's just an entirely different game for Oso. Like, more than any other guy, I mean, certainly more than Ryan, I think, he probably felt the difference in physicality moving up to the next level. The way that the Suns were asking him to physically do so much in order for him to exist as a center. It is quite difficult, honestly. But it's like, look, unless he learns to shoot, he does have to play center. So either one has to happen. Either you shoot or you put on 30 pounds of muscle and you're like a center full time, right? But one of those things probably has to happen long term for Oso.
Or he dribbles a lot.
Yeah, that can, yeah.
Because if he becomes a hub, an offensive hub, not just necessarily catching and passing, but driving, dribbling it down in half court, Draymond Green. He becomes a little bit more like Draymond Green, who does shoot, but that's not like what you want Draymond to do. But if he can be more like Draymond Green as somebody who is essentially running the offense at times when he's out there, that'd be really beneficial. We saw sort of best case scenario of that in Summer League, which, by the way, not good competition. So like, it's not really a good way to, project what it's going to look like in the NBA. But his intention to look at the rim and drive to the rim made him a better player. And if he's looking at the rim and driving to the rim and not afraid to go to the free throw line in those cases, because I think that's part of why he didn't look at the rim for the first half of the season.
Yeah, maybe.
That, I think, will make a big, big difference for him, because you can't just be nothing. With the ball in your hands, you can't be nothing as a scorer. You have to have some version of a threat. And if it's not going to be a shot, because, in order to fix that, you got to rebuild it from the ground up. So if it's not going to be a shot, you got to start driving.
I think I jokingly compared Oso on a recent episode to prime Ben Simmons. And that was obviously in jest, but you just made me think of it again, because Ben Simmons, apparently, did you see this report today that Mark Stein said he turned down a veteran minimum offer from the Knicks? Yeah. And that's all that's out there for him. Ben Simmons might have to retire.
He might want to.
He's a guy who doesn't like basketball, I think, probably all that much.
Yeah, and the New York market is probably terrifying for him.
Yeah, for sure. But like that, just to your point, that is the value of a guy who is kind of a nothing with the ball in their hands. No matter how good you are at the other stuff, you're mobile, switchable, can play multiple positions, can rebound, can pass. Ben Simmons can do all those things, but he's a nothing with the ball in his hands. And now he might be out of the NBA. I know you want the floater numbers.
Yes, I do.
I know you're dying to hear the floater numbers.
I am really curious, because I even thought I should look up the floater numbers, and then I literally thought, I bet Sam will do it.
Yeah. So Oso shot, he took 66 floater attempts last season. He shot 53%. And here's the thing. 53%, like when you think about
That's really good.
It is. When you think about it in a vacuum, it's like, do I want a 53% floater if I can get 65% on a layup or a dunk or whatever? And like, yeah, it's less in terms of points per possession, but it is from further out. And 53% compared to other guys who take a lot of floaters in the NBA is quite good. To give you an example, Nikola Jokic, who takes the third most floaters in the league and is very dangerous from every area on the floor, as we know. Nikola Jokic is at 55%. So comparable to Oso Ighodaro. Here is your next trivia question. The only player in the NBA last season, guard or big, to shoot at least 100 floater attempts and at least 60% on floaters. And I would be very surprised if you got this.
I have two immediate guesses. Trae Young.
Trae Young is not it.
Okay, De'Aaron Fox?
No, I'll give you a hint. It's a big man.
Oh, it's a big man.
I said guard or big man, but
Yeah.
it is a big man. I'd still be surprised if you got it, to be entirely
Sabonis?
honest. Not Sabonis. I'm curious where he's at.
I think that's the only guesses I got.
It's Nikola Vucevic,
That was
who shot
actually,
70% on 100 floaters last year.
He's gotten very efficient. It's kind of crazy how efficient he is right now.
He also shoots threes.
Yeah.
If he wasn't just a complete nothing on defense,
Yeah.
he would be such a fascinating player, right?
He's
I mean,
an-
I guess he is a fascinating player.
Well, he's kind of the perfect backup center if you can, if like just an innings eater.
if
you
someone
will.
could ever do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Zubats. He's also up there above 60%.
That
He
makes sense.
Took less than 100, but he's also above 60%. Point being, getting above 60% on floaters, really, really difficult. Only a couple guys in the league do it. And so Oso, 53%, pretty solid. You'll see a lot of guys, a lot of guards kind of hovering around that 40 to 50 range, basically. And if you get up above 50, you're pretty good.
Where can he improve? So we talked about the dribbling. I don't think there's any 3-point shot there. Like we're just so far away from that. I don't think it's even worth mentioning, right?
No, it's just not the expectation. I'd love to see an elbow jumper from him. He has to remake his entire form from the ground up. So start with an elbow jumper, and yeah, we'll see.
So we didn't even talk about it much, but his passing is one of his skills that I think could really shine this coming year if he ends up getting an opportunity, which I think, by the way, I'm glad we did it in this order. He's the player of these three that's the least likely to get an opportunity. I think he will, but he's not guaranteed minutes the way Ryan Dunn is to start the season. And I think Collin Gillespie is actually going to essentially be guaranteed minutes to start the season as well.
Yeah,
Oso's
more so
gonna have
just
to
out
earn
of
them.
more so out of opportunity, right? Like if the
Out of
Suns
opportunity, positionally, yeah.
Yeah, if the Suns had made it a priority to get Chris Paul on the team, then yeah, Collin Gillespie would be buried.
Exactly.
But because of the way the summer shook out, and maybe this was very intentional on their part, but Collin Gillespie is just going to get more shine now because it feels like he has to.
Yeah,
and also, there are a lot more guys in the depth chart who could be ahead of him.
Yes. So, he's got to earn it, and that means he's got to do the right things, which I think is good. It was said that Ryan Dunn and Oso were essentially in the gym every day throughout the offseason. They worked really, really hard. He definitely understands that there's an improvement needed for him, but the passing is going to be really important. He had a good assist-to-turnover ratio. Didn't get a lot of assists, but didn't play a lot of minutes.
71 assists to 39 turnovers.
Yeah,
Just
a better
to quote what you're
ratio than
talking about.
KD.
That's a very good ratio. And I think a lot of people, understandably, we even got, when we did a mailbag a few weeks ago, it's like, hey, a lot of people talk about Oso's passing. Why am I not seeing him get 3, 4, 5 assists in these games? And I think that's very fair on the one hand, but also, when you look at the stats, yeah, it takes some extrapolation and you sort of have to project out, but 71 to 39 assist turnover ratio. For a rookie who's processing the game a little bit slower than veterans, that's very good. Massively different type of player, but just as for context, like DeAndre Ayton, number 1 overall pick for the Suns, never had a season where he had more assists than turnovers. Yeah. Not once.
And
So
for him, it's diversifying the type of assists he can actually throw
Totally.
because the bounce passes to cutters, that's still going to be good, and he's good at that. But if he can mix up those drives, he can find shooters, and if he becomes a big who can find shooters, it's pretty valuable. There's just not a lot of those guys, especially the ones that don't post up.
yeah, it's hard. To throw those passes on the move is what's really difficult for a lot of big guys, and not like send them sailing 12 rows into the stands, right? It's not really something we've seen from Oso yet. So I think it would be a big leap forward, but I hope he can do it. I certainly hope we see a lot of those inverted pick and rolls for him, a la what he was doing in Summer League.
I think for him, defensively, he has to be. Look, he's going to have to be played power forward, or asked to play power forward this year. He has to become a bit of a perimeter defender. So we're talking about his defense. He was pretty good at like all of it last year. Those surprisingly good rim protection stats. Pretty good at switching. He's undersized, so like switching isn't completely out of the question for him. But he's got to become consistent at being more of a perimeter defender if he wants to stay on the court, because then he can find ways to play with other bigs. Spacing be damned, but that also means getting a lot of rebounds. But I do think, and we've talked about this with him before, many times at this point. As a center, maybe not a great rebounder. As a power forward, a great rebounder.
Yeah, I when I watch Oso, like, functionally, I don't sense that it's a motor issue for him. Sometimes guys are bad rebounders because they don't have the motor. I don't think that's the case with Oso. I think he was just playing guys who consistently had 30 or 40 pounds on him and 3 inches of height. So if he is playing power forward, I think he will be a good rebounder for a power forward. As a center, I don't really see how he could ever be like a good rebounder for a center. Maybe he could be less of a bad one, though.
Yeah, and I think he can. I think just more of an intention on doing that. Being more physical, getting stronger, all of those things will help him get better. But all of these guys, all three of them, if they can add a little bit of a strength, would help. And I think, Collin, being the guy that's closest to his prime or in it, is the least likely to do that. But Oso and Ryan are going to. We'll get a Muscle Watch tweet about them sometime in the next 2 weeks. 100%. I have zero doubt. So we'll see how much they've added. But they've been working all offseason. I am confident that they've added some muscle for him.
It is crazy to think, by the way, Collin just turned, because we didn't mention it, he just turned 27. Oso just turned 23. So there is, even though we're talking about internal development for all of these guys, there is quite a bit of an age gap when we discuss them. And you mentioned Collin being in his prime. He is just a little bit different.
Yeah, his age is more about his age in the league, which is just 2 seasons where he didn't play much. So that's just kind of who he is at this point. How confident we are in Oso improving. I think for him, there's going to be a lot of encouragement from his teammates and the coaching staff to do those types of things that he did in Summer League. And I don't know how it'll go, to be honest. I think it will be quite interesting to see as his name moves up the scouting report. Instead of being the last guy off the bench where nobody knows how he plays and it's kind of unpredictable to see what he does, instead of being that guy, he's going to be a guy that the opposing team understands a little bit better. I think it would be quite interesting to see how that changes how he plays. And I think there's a chance it could actually benefit him because then he can play against their expectations because he is a very smart player. I'm not overly confident in an undersized player who has struggled scoring. Mm-hmm. But I think the tools that he has makes it more likely that he can overcome that than most players in his situation. But I think this season is probably going to be pretty important, in his ability to be an NBA player or not.
No doubt. I think the big thing for me with Oso is, again, I talked about how Jordan Ott needs to feature Ryan Dunn in certain ways, right? Like he needs to work with him in order to. Development is not this one-sided thing. It's this constant two-way conversation between the organization and the player. How that relates to Oso, you need to play him next to the right guys. You need to feature him next to the right guys. I think Oso is so smart, but given his lack of a lot of NBA skills, frankly, like smarts, intelligence, it only takes you so far. If you put him in a lot of lineups where you're just like asking him to create something out of nothing, then he's going to flop like a fish. But if you give him opportunities to play next to Devin Booker where they can develop a 1-2 or like a 2-man game where he's actively creating for other guys out of the short roll to a much lesser extent. But if you put him next to Collin Gillespie, who I also think is quite a smart player in the way he moves the basketball, I think he has a chance, right? But it's like, there are certain other lineup combinations that might look pretty ugly, right? Like if Oso's mostly playing with Jared Butler this year, then good luck to him. But like that's not very fair on Oso's ability to develop as a player. So they need to have the right plan in place in order to feature him.
Yeah, chemistry with Collin is going to be important too. I'm glad you mentioned that because those two guys, like it wouldn't be all that surprising if Mark Williams is a starting center and Oso is actually the backup until Malowacz gets a little more comfortable in his skin here in the NBA. And, those two having a good, Nick Richards is there too, so he could play too, don't get me wrong. But I think Nick Richards wasn't very good last year. So there's, a non-zero chance that Oso Ighodaro was better, even undersized. And, a backup center being undersized is different than a starting center being undersized. If you're a little bit faster than those backup centers that are bigger, that's actually beneficial for you. So there's ways to take advantage of that. So, him having a good pick and roll chemistry, sort of Tyler Kolek-like chemistry with Collin Gillespie could benefit him a lot going forward. I am overall excited to see all three of these players next year. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I have a lot riding on Ryan Dunn being good. I really, really want that. So that's the most pressure for me is on him. But the other two guys, I think, are just kind of interesting players that we get to see play next year, and they're going to have opportunity more than they've ever had.
I'm rooting really hard for all three of these guys. I think the most pressure is on the Suns for Ryan Dunn. I think the most pressure is on me for Collin Gillespie because I kind of feel like I've been talking him up a lot, and now I'm going to feel pretty silly if he's just nothing this year. So I just want to say I reserve the right for him to have a stinker of a season. That's okay if that happens. But yeah, obviously I'm rooting really hard for these guys. It should be fun to watch all three of them. And also, look, I know it's off-season, guys. Like, it's the dead period of the off-season. Fewer people listen this time of year. But thanks for continuing to tune in. And also, I just want to say, we've given you like 4 or 5 episodes in a row that have run well over an hour. You know, we're kind of hitting our groove of these like 75, 80-minute episodes. So for those of you who have a longer commute, I hope you appreciate it.
It's good timing, too, because we weren't able to get a Patreon episode out last week. So we're going to give a little extra for this one. Hopefully people are happy to hear this series back, even if it's just for one episode, since we don't have all that many young players to talk about. But yeah, thank you, everyone, for listening. Anything else, Sam, before we go?
I don't think so. When's Media Day? 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
We got like a month. I don't know. Yeah. It's less than a month until training camp. So
I think 3 weeks Media Day, 1 month preseason. So we're almost there. We're getting there.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Patreon.com/thetimeline, of course, if you want to join. Hopefully we'll have time to get back with the Patreon episode this week. That's the plan. We appreciate you all. Yes, we'll be back very soon.